In the heart of the Sundarbans, where emerald foliage stretches for miles and the golden sun filters through the thick mangrove canopy like a lantern held high by the gods, there lived a tigress named Ravia. Her fur, deep orange with thick black stripes like strokes of war paint, shimmered in the sunlight as she prowled through the underbrush with the elegance of a queen and the vigilance of a mother. She was known through the forest paths not just for her strength, but for something far rarer: wisdom. Ravia had given birth to 3 cubs in the dry season: Aryan, the bold one; Zuri, the quiet thinker; and Tariq, always the wanderer. They were still young, curious, and clumsy in their play, often tumbling over roots and snapping twigs as they mimicked her stalking movements. The den was tucked under a fallen sal tree near the edge of a slow-moving stream, where fireflies danced at dusk and frogs sang lullabies under a silver moon. For months, life was abundant. Deer came to graze near the watering holes, birds called in 1,000 voices, and the tiger family thrived in the rhythm of the jungle. But the jungle had been dry for too long. Rain hadn't visited in weeks. The ground cracked under paw and hoof, the leaves whispered warnings when they rustled, and even the monkeys grew quiet in the afternoon heat. Ravia felt it in her bones: something was changing. The elders had once spoken of fire, not as myth but memory. Fire, they had said, was the one predator that did not need to eat to destroy. Then one morning, it began. It started with smoke, thin, gray tendrils rising on the eastern horizon, barely visible against the dawn mist. Ravia caught the scent as she returned from hunting. It wasn't the smoke from a man's cooking fire. No, this smoke was wild, untamed. It carried with it the scent of burning sap, dry leaves, fear. She froze mid-step, her muscles taut like drawn bowstrings. The cubs, nestled in their den, perked their ears at her sudden stillness. Zuri, ever the sensitive one, let out a questioning mewl. Ravia didn't respond. Her ears rotated, and her nose twitched again. Then came the birds. First a few, then a torrent. Parakeets, mynas, hornbills. They screamed through the canopy in a frenzy, breaking branches as they fled westward. Small mammals followed. A family of mongooses tore through the underbrush, squeaking in panic. A pangolin, usually sluggish and shy, bolted across the clearing, scales glinting in the early light. The jungle was emptying. Ravia dashed back to the den. The cubs looked up, confused and sleepy, as she emerged from the shadows like a windstorm. She licked each of them urgently, nudging Aryan to his feet, nipping at Tariq, who tried to roll away in play. Up, her body said. Now, no time. The roar came next. A low, distant growl, not of a tiger, but of the fire. It rumbled like 1,000 predators moving as one, devouring all in their path. Trees in the far distance crackled like bones being snapped. Ravia knew what must be done. There was only one way to survive the inferno: the river. Wide, winding, and deep, it split the jungle like a serpent of salvation. But it was far, and the cubs were slow. She made a plan, the way only a mother with everything to lose can. She would not outrun the fire. She would outsmart it. They began the journey at dusk, when the fire's glow had begun to paint the trees in blood-red hues. Ravia led them on narrow paths few animals dared to tread, beneath rotting logs, through waterlogged gullies, beneath thorny brambles. She doubled back often, confusing predators and fire alike. Every scent trail she left was quickly masked by water or mud. The cubs struggled. Aryan kept surging ahead, ignoring her chuffs of caution. Zuri walked with eyes wide, tail low, every sound a threat. Tariq lagged behind, distracted by the world even as it burned. But Ravia never scolded. She merely watched, learned, adjusted. She kept them close, close enough to feel their breath, but never so close they would block each other's escape. And then, they heard it. The roar had grown louder. Trees behind them began to shiver and fall. The fire had changed course. It was no longer chasing, it was circling. The wind had turned. Ravia's heart thundered. Her mind raced. The paths she knew were now death traps. She looked left, right, up. And then she saw it, a hollow banyan tree, partially fallen but still rooted. The inside was wide enough for her and her cubs to fit. If they could wait inside, they might survive the ring of fire long enough to break through. But hiding was not a plan. Hiding was gambling. The river was still the only salvation. By moonrise, the flames glowed just beyond the hills. Ravia could feel the heat even before it reached them. She pushed the cubs forward with gentle but firm nudges, whispering in body language, "Go faster." The journey became desperate. Branches clawed at them. Smoke thickened. The cubs began to cough. Tarek stumbled, and Ravia scooped him up by the scruff like when he was newborn. Still, they moved. She could now hear the fire eating. Consuming. The very earth hissed in pain. Embers fell from above like fiery raindrops. One landed near Zuri, who squealed and jumped. Arian pressed close, shielding her instinctively. Ravia's paws burned. Her muscles screamed. But she didn't stop. She could not stop. Then, through the smoke, she saw it, silver light. Movement. Ripples. The river. But between them and the water stood a wall of fire, thinner here than elsewhere, but fire nonetheless. She paced, growled lowly, calculating. There was no other way. They would have to run through it. A break appeared. A sudden gust of wind parted the flames like curtains just wide enough for a sprint. She seized the moment. With a thunderous roar, Ravia leapt forward, Arian and Zuri at her heels. She dropped Tarek onto the ground beside her and roared again, "Run." The cubs darted. The flames licked at them, clawed at them, but they were too fast. Ravia plunged after them, fur singing, paws slapping against scorching soil, smoke clawing at her lungs. Then, cold water. The river swallowed them whole. Steam hissed around them as they splashed into safety, the fire raging behind them, thwarted by the ancient flow of the river's current. They had made it, but the danger was far from over. The jungle behind them was burning. The land ahead was unknown. And somewhere deep within the jungle, others stirred. Not all who watched the fire were afraid of it. Some welcomed it. The river had spared them. Its cool embrace swallowed the searing heat from Ravia's paws and rinsed the smoke from her burning throat. She and her cubs clung to the muddy shallows beneath the roots of a great fig tree, gasping, coughing, drenched, but alive. The fire roared behind them, now a distant wall of flickering orange and black. From across the river, the jungle wailed. Trees collapsed with loud cracks, animals screeched in panicked flight, and the smoke twisted into columns like dark spirits rising to the sky. But here, across the water, the earth was quieter. The fire had not yet crossed. Not yet. Ravia lay with her belly half submerged, breathing heavily. Arian curled beside her, chest heaving. Zuri whimpered, nose pressed to the damp mud. Tarek stared back toward the blaze, eyes wide with awe and terror. None of them had spoken in the language of tigers, of growls and nudges and breath. Not yet. The moment was too fragile. The silence too thick. But Ravia's mind was racing. The fire had spared them, yes, but it had not retreated. It crept along the far bank, sniffing like a beast denied its prey. It would circle, she knew. Fires did not give up. Not when winds could shift. Not when foolish men lit them. The jungle across the river, their home, was gone. She had to find higher ground, a new shelter. Food, water, territory, and she had to do it fast. Because the river might not stop the fire next time. And they were not alone. Night fell slowly, like a dark curtain reluctantly drawn across a burning stage. They moved upriver, keeping to the dense underbrush. The cubs followed more obediently now, Arian subdued, Zuri glued to Ravia's flank, Tarek no longer straying. The fire had taught them. But danger still buzzed in the air like invisible wasps. Ravia led them toward a place she had only visited once before, as a young huntress chasing wild boar across unclaimed land. The terrain was steep, ringed by rocky hills and hidden caves. The scent of leopard had lingered then, and once, the footprint of something larger, a sloth bear perhaps, or worse. But now, it was their only hope. The journey was long and tense. Twice, Ravia stopped, sniffing the air. Once for the scent of humans, lingering smoke from a burnt cooking pit, and once for something else. A strange musk. Not tiger. Not leopard. Something older. Wild, but masked. The jungle's memory stirred uneasily. Then came the river crossing. At a narrow bend, Ravia waded into the shallows, water up to her chest. The cubs hesitated, whimpering. She chuffed softly, urging them forward. Zuri went first, trembling, her reflection broken by the current. Arian followed with a snort, tail raised. Tarek had to be nudged in, twice. But as they reached the other side, a sound split the night. A roar. Not Ravia's. Not a mother's warning or a cub's cry. This was a challenge. They froze. The roar echoed across the valley, deep and guttural, rising from somewhere in the dense forest beyond. Ravia turned, eyes narrowing. It came again, closer this time. And with it, movement, shadows sliding through trees, the faintest crunch of underbrush. Not fire. Not man. Not prey. Another tiger. A male. And not just any male, an old one, powerful. Ravia had known many in her life, rivals, mates, threats. This one was unfamiliar but bold, unafraid to mark territory even with smoke still curling through the trees. It was madness, or confidence. She herded the cubs into a ravine, dense with vines and roots, forcing them to lie still beneath a curtain of foliage. They waited, breathless, listening. Then came the footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, closer. The cubs whimpered. Ravia turned, placing her body between them and the sound. Her muscles tensed. Her ears flattened. And out from the smoke-dappled ferns stepped a tiger unlike any she had seen. He was massive, larger than any male she remembered. His shoulders rippled with scars, his eye clouded white on one side. But it was the smell of him that struck her most, not just blood and muscle, but ash. His fur bore the scent of old fire, as if he had walked through many and survived them all. He did not growl. He did not roar again. He only looked. At her. At the cubs. At the smoke curling from the far bank. Then he sat. Calmly. Watching. Ravia did not move. Her breath came in tight, shallow draws. The cubs huddled behind her, silent as prey. Finally, the stranger spoke, not in words, but with a deep, rumbling chuff that carried no threat. He tilted his head, then turned, slowly, and walked away, vanishing into the forest like a memory. Ravia did not sleep that night. She paced, listened, waited, but the male did not return. By morning, they resumed their climb into the hills. The fire, though quieter, still smoldered on the far horizon, feeding on the jungle's bones. Smoke drifted like ghosts through the treetops. Birds had gone silent. Even the wind seemed wary. At midday, they found the cave. High in the cliffs, shielded by hanging moss and sharp stone, it offered shelter from predators and fire alike. The floor was cool and dry. Ravia sniffed every corner. No scent of bear. No signs of recent use. Safe. For now. The cubs collapsed into sleep, exhausted. Ravia curled around them, finally closing her eyes. And dreamed of fire. But elsewhere, something stirred. Beneath the burned canopy, in the blackened skeleton of the jungle, a man stepped lightly over scorched earth. His boots were singed. His face smeared with ash. He carried no gun, only a long knife and a pouch of herbs. His name was Dev, and he had been tracking tigers for years, not for trophies but for truth. He had followed the fire. Had seen the marks of claws in the mud, the broken branches, the strange path through smoke. He had seen the leap across the flames. And he had seen the paw prints, 4 small, 1 large. A mother, he whispered. And she was not just any tigress. This one moved like smoke and vanished like breath. She was the one the forest spoke of in broken bird cries and frightened footprints. He followed, not to catch, but to warn. Because in the hills, deeper than the fire, darker than smoke, something was waking. Something old. And it was hungry. The smoke had thinned, but the scent of fire lingered. It was not just in the air, it had settled into the leaves, into the soil, into the bones of every living thing that had survived. Ravia stood at the mouth of the cave as dawn broke over the horizon, casting the world in a fragile, golden light. Below, the jungle slept uneasily, still haunted by ash. Her cubs lay behind her, curled together in the shadows of their rocky refuge, their breathing steady now, their dreams quieter. For the moment, they were safe. But Ravia did not trust moments. Not anymore. That morning, a new sound came. Not the roar of fire. Not the hiss of wind. A whistle. Short. Sharp. Human. She stiffened. Down below, far along a trail of flattened brush and wet soot, a figure emerged, moving upright, slowly, as if wary of disturbing the spirits of the forest. It was the man. Dev. The same man who had once passed through her territory seasons ago, dropping meat for injured jackals, bandaging the wounded leg of a leopard cub abandoned by its mother. A strange man, one the jungle neither feared nor understood. Ravia knew his scent. He had never tried to track her, never followed too close, never pointed a weapon, but now he was here, and his gaze went straight to the cave. Dev stopped 50 paces away, close enough to be seen but far enough to respect the invisible boundary between them. He dropped to one knee, slowly removing a pouch from his belt. He pulled something out and placed it on a flat stone, a raw haunch of meat, soaked in river water. A peace offering. Then he sat and waited. Ravia's ears flicked. Her eyes narrowed. She did not trust men. But she did not smell violence on this one. She watched him for hours. He made no move. When the sun rose high, she stepped out, slowly, silently. Not down to the stone, no, never that close. Just enough for him to see her, and for her to see that his hands were empty. Dev bowed his head. "Queen of Fire," he whispered. "You're real." Over the next few days, they kept their distance. Dev did not return again until dusk the following evening, placing another offering on the same stone. This time, he left a strip of cloth soaked in water, laced with crushed herbs. Ravia watched him place it there and then back away without a word. She sniffed it later. The scent was strange, but not unpleasant. A healer's offering. She did not eat it. But she did not destroy it either. Each night, the cubs grew stronger. Each morning, Ravia scouted farther. And each day, the forest whispered that something else was moving. Something older than fire. It began with silence. Not just the absence of birdsong, but a vacuum, as if the jungle itself held its breath. Then the scent returned. The same musk she had caught days ago in the wind, beneath the fire's smoke. And tracks. Wide. Deep. Not bear. Not cat. Not even man. Dev found them too. He returned one evening looking tense, his movements quicker, more urgent. He placed no offering this time, only climbed to a ledge near the cave and sat, facing the horizon. "They're waking," he murmured. Ravia crept behind a veil of ferns, ears forward. "You felt it, didn't you?" he said to the air. "Something from before. Before us. Before fire." She growled low. He turned his head, just slightly. "There's a legend," he whispered. "In these hills. The Ruksha Pahari, the shadow ones. Not ghosts. Not spirits. Just beasts the jungle forgot. They hide until fire clears the old away." He pointed toward the far hills, blackened and still smoldering. "They feed on fear. They hunt in smoke." Ravia did not understand his words. But she knew the meaning in his voice. Danger. Real danger. That night, the first kill came. A sambar deer, throat torn, body untouched. No tiger killed like that. No leopard. This was not hunger. This was warning. Ravia stood over the carcass as the moon bled silver through the clouds. She sniffed the wound, deep and jagged. It stank of rot, though the kill was fresh. Zuri crept close, curious, but Ravia blocked her. No, not this time. They returned to the cave. And waited. The next night, another kill. Then a third. Closer now. Dev returned just before dawn. This time he was not alone. With him came a girl, dark-eyed, hair braided in beads, silent as a shadow herself. She carried no weapons either. Only a bag of herbs and a bundle of carved wood. She was a tracker too, perhaps. Or a priestess. Or both. They spoke in hushed tones outside the cave. Then Dev stood. "If we don't leave soon, they'll come here. They always do. Fire lures them like blood draws sharks." The girl touched the stone and whispered a word Ravia could not understand. Then they vanished into the jungle again. Ravia waited until dusk. Then she moved. She woke the cubs gently, her body urgent but not panicked. She led them through hidden paths, old trails carved by elephants and forgotten by men. They moved swiftly, silently. She could feel the weight of the hills watching her. The cubs sensed it too. Even Arian didn't stray. Even Tariq stayed close. Then the wind changed. And they came. The Ruksha were not beasts of flesh alone. They moved like fog, like hunger made form. Shapes barely glimpsed through trees, eyes too far apart, limbs bent the wrong way. No growls, no snarls, just the sound of leaves parting and the hum of something ancient. Ravia did not wait to challenge them. She ran. The cubs followed, and the jungle erupted. Every bird still breathing took flight. Every tree seemed to lean away. The Ruksha glided after them, not running but flowing. Ravia darted through narrow gullies, leapt broken logs, crashed through thickets. She turned at sharp angles, confused their trail. But they followed, unrelenting. Then she heard it. A whistle. 3 short bursts. Dev. She turned toward it without hesitation. Ahead, a clearing opened. Dev and the girl stood in the center, surrounded by a ring of fire, not wild, but contained. Torches, smoke, herbs burning, ancient wards. As Ravia and her cubs burst into the ring, Dev threw powder into the flames. The Ruksha reached the circle, and stopped. Shrieking. The sound was like teeth grinding on stone. The shadows twisted, howled, hissed. Then vanished. Smoke swallowed them. Silence fell. The jungle began to breathe again. Dev knelt, face pale, sweat shining on his skin. They won't come back soon, he muttered. They hate fire that knows them. Ravia stared at him, then at the girl, then at the cubs, safe beside her. She would not thank them. But she would remember. Weeks passed. The rains finally came. New green burst from blackened soil. The jungle, scarred but alive, began to rebuild. Ravia claimed a new territory, near the cliffs, by the stream that never dried. The cubs grew strong, sleek. Arian learned to stalk without crashing into every bush. Zuri learned to fight. Tarek still wandered, but now, he always returned. The Ruksha were not seen again. But sometimes, Ravia would stand on the ridge, staring at the black scars left on the horizon. And wonder. And remember. The fire. The river. The shadows. The man. And the last ember that had not died, but chosen to burn bright instead.